Episode 19, the Photime Podcast. Kilo Bravo 6 November uniform, Dan. We're going to talk about his no-nonsense study guides, CW, and lots more coming up.
AmateurRadio15.com presents Photime, the other ham radio podcast, sponsored by Main Trading Company. Find them online at mtcradio.com. Now, here's your host, Cale Nelson, K4CDN.
It is episode number 19 of the Photime Podcast, and I'm your host, Cale, Kilo 4 Charlie Delta November. Thank you so much for tuning in to the other ham radio podcast. Got a great show lined up for you coming up. We've got Dan, Kilo Bravo 6 November uniform, and he's the guy who produces those amazing no-nonsense study guides. We're going to break those down and talk about that along with some really great stuff. But first, that's right, we got to talk about our friends in Paris, Texas. Richard and Christy Lenore, they own and operate the Main Trading Company. They are the official show sponsor here at the Other Ham Radio Podcast. Richard and Christy are doing it great, and you need to give them a chance if you're needing some gear, whether it's new or pre-owned gear. They more than likely have what you need or can get their hands on it. You can find them online at mtcradio.com. Again, it's Mary Tango Charlie radio.com. mtcradio.com. Check them out. You will not be disappointed with the prices and most especially their service. Now, we've got a call coming up with Dan. Dan's call is Kilo Bravo 6 November uniform. Dan, he currently resides in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he has spent quite a bit of time in amateur radio, and he's providing a great service for the amateur community through his no-nonsense study guides. All right, we want to welcome to the show Dan, KB6NU, Kilo Bravo 6 November uniform. Dan, will you please pronounce your last name for me?
My name is Romanchik.
Romanchik. I would have never gotten that right.
Yeah, that's all right. You're not the only one.
Yeah, it happens. Dan hails from Ann Arbor, Michigan, currently, right. And he spends a lot of time on the air, and he also does a lot of cool things for us in the hobby, like generate these awesome no-nonsense study guides. And Dan, that's how I kind of stumbled into your blog, and I heard you recently on the QSO Today podcast, which we'll link to in the show notes. You can go over there and check those guys out as well. But Dan, I want to talk to you about the no-nonsense study guides, because a lot of the forums that I participate on, and our listeners may not have any idea what we're talking about, but a lot of the forums I participate on, when someone comes in and says, "Hey, I want to be a ham, where do I go?" Everybody just kind of vomits on them their idea of the best place to study. This and that, X, Y, and Z. And every single time I see a mention for your study guide. So can you kind of give us some ideas of your study guides?
Oh, sure. So, in fact, it's kind of an interesting story, and I can't claim that the format of those study guides is even my idea. What happened is I was at a field day one time, and I was sitting at the PR booth and handing out literature, and this guy comes up. His call sign's W8BBS, and he says, "Dan," he says, "I got this study guide, and I want to get it in the hands of more people." And he says, I know you have this blog, and this was a long time ago, so the blog wasn't even as popular as it is now. But I looked it over, and I said, "Yeah, this is pretty good." And I said, "I'll post it on my blog for sure." And what he did was he took every question in the question pool, reworded it as a statement, and then grouped the statements so that they made sense. Then he added some text to make it read like a study guide, and he did a real nice job of it. 2 years later, when the question pool was being updated, or 2 or 3 years, I forget, I tried to get in touch with him again to update the study guide, because it had gotten some downloads and all, and couldn't find him. Couldn't get in touch with him. And I said, well, geez, this would be a shame to just let it die. So I took it over, and I started producing them after that. And then after the next time the general class pool was updated, I wrote one for the general class and then did one for the extra class, all with that same style, where I would take the questions in the question pool, reword them as statements, group the related questions, and then add text wherever to make it all read better and explain things more.
I've recently purchased the extra study guide. And
thank you.
Yeah. Well, after I heard you on the other program, I thought to myself, hey, that sounds like it would be a great way to study. So I purchased it. I downloaded it to my Kindle, or it's a fake Kindle, but anyway, so it's a reader. And I've started going through it. So I'm reading it, and you immediately open with math. And I'm the world's worst mathematician. And I thought to myself, boy, this is going to be a lot harder than I'd anticipated. Just because math and I do not get along very well. But if I'm explain to me if I'm reading it correctly, the text that is just regular print is text that is explaining what's coming up in bold print, and the bold print is the actual material from the test. Is that a correct assumption?
Well, no. So here's the way to read the study guides. The what's in bold is the actual correct answer.
Okay.
And the text around it is the question, again, changed to read as a statement.
Okay, I got you.
So some question might be, what is the critical angle? And the answer might be, well, the critical angle is the angle at which radio waves bounce off the ionosphere. Well, I would take that question and the answer and change it to read, the critical angle is the angle at which radio waves bounce off the ionosphere, and the answer would be in bold, the angle at which radio waves bounce off the ionosphere.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a really nice guide.
That's actually a question from the general class test, and it stuck in my mind because I'm updating the general class study guide just now.
And you've got the technician coming up. Is it general? Which one resets in July?
That's the general class.
Okay, the general
technician
class.
happened last year.
Okay, good. I'm covered with my wife then. I'm going to throw this on her and just see what happens, because I really like the way that's working out. Guys, Dan is producing a study guide that you can purchase from his website, and it's his call sign, it's his blog. It's Kilo Bravo 6 November Uniform. Is that correct?
Right.
All right, I don't have it written down. I'm doing this out of my memory, so if I stumble, it's okay. You can go to his website, his blog, which is also known as the most popular ham blog on the internet, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, here's my joke about that. I often claim it's the number one rated ham radio blog, because when you type in ham radio blog or amateur radio blog into Google, I most often come up number one.
Yeah, well, hey, if you're on number one on Google, if you're on Google number one, you're doing okay. So
I can't claim I'm number one read though. So.
Yeah, you've got the optimization rolling. That's awesome, man. Well, again, thank you for being on the program. The study guide, I believe, is something that we have a lot of new guys coming in, and you and I talked about that just a little bit with email. And we have some folks who are listening as well who are considering the hobby. So we like to try to talk to those guys too. So when you're looking for something to study, you've got the ARRL manual, you've got Gordon's book, you've got Ham Test Online, you've got Ham Test Exam, hamexam.org. There's so many things you can do. A lot of people want something that they can hold and read. Other people want to do it online. Dan, with your extra study guide, what I decided to do was to download it to the reader, and I could have it on my phone. I've got it on my reader and the laptop there if I wanted it as well. So it's kind of in the middle. And if you read the reviews and if you hear people that have used it express themselves, and I have, folks, I'm speaking from experience. There's a lot of people I talk to that are very happy with what Dan is producing. So if you're looking to study for tech, if you're looking for an upgrade in the general or even an extra upgrade like I need to get taken care of, you want to check that out. Dan, tell us a little bit about, and we'll come back to the study guys in just a couple of minutes, but tell us a little bit about your introduction into amateur radio, how you became involved in amateur radio.
Oh, that's a long time ago. So my grandparents had a old Philco radio in their basement, one of these big old console radios,
Mm-hmm.
and had a shortwave band on it. And I started listening to the shortwave band, and that just hooked me on radio. The fact that you could hear, radio stations from London and from Russia and China, and that was just amazing to me. So it took me a while to actually get a ham ticket after that. Mainly because there weren't any ham radio operators in my neighborhood. At least I couldn't see their antennas. And at that time, you had to have the novice class exam given to you by an already licensed radio amateur. So it took me a while to actually find somebody to give me the novice test. But in the meantime, I taught myself Morse code by listening to shortwave radio. And so I was ready to go when I finally found the guy to give me the test.
Fantastic. How old were you?
Well, when I first started listening to the radio, probably about 10 or 11, and 16 when I finally got my license.
I hear you. Well, that's 16. I had a very great interest in radio and whatnot, but I was chasing women with very loud speakers in my vehicle. I was an employee at Radio Shack and really enjoyed my time there. And I had amateurs come in all the time. And of course, working at Radio Shack, they assume, that you're a geek or a nerd or whatever the term to use is. And those guys would try their best to talk me into it. And I dabbled here and there and looked, but it was the code that always just kind of ran me off. I was 16, I was 17, 18 years old, too busy to think about that.
Sure.
Trying to figure out if I'm going to go to college. So I stayed away for a long time. Actually, in about 97, 98, I bought a tech no-code guide from Radio Shack and read that a little bit and never took the test. 4 study guides later. That tells you how many years passed, right?
Yeah.
My wife, it came in from Amazon, and my wife said, "What are you doing? You bought another one of these? You'll never take this." And that's all it took. Was she threatened me, and I was like, "Oh, it's on now. I'm taking it." So I finally took the test. But
well, I get a lot of that actually, and I teach classes, and I get a lot. I hear that story fairly frequently. That's why, like in my classes, I teach a 1-day class. And, sometimes we jokingly refer to it as a ham cram class because we're just really just cramming answers into people. But I mean, it was made to address that issue. Don't let people sort of off the hook. Get them into a class, do it right then, get them their license right then. Rather than, study this thing for a while and take 8 or 10 weeks of classes, and that just doesn't work out. That's not where it is in today's environment. Everybody's busy, But if you can do it in a day, if they can give me a day, then I can get them a license, and then they can take that license and do what they want with it. You know what I'm saying? That's they've taken that first step already.
Dan, it seems to me that while the tech class, the tech book was great, and the studying for general was fine, and learning what I did learn there, I've learned so much more with my Elmers and participating with someone else on the air.
Yeah,
far more than I've ever learned. Yeah. This is to me, it's kind of like on the job training, and I know people poo-poo that or whatever, but it's for me, that's how it's worked. I've learned more doing than I've ever learned in a book regarding amateur radio.
Absolutely. I get criticized all the time for running these 1-day classes, and my comeback on that is that, okay, say you have a regular, more traditional kind of class. Say you've got 8 or 10 weeks. You've got 2 hours a session, right? Mm-hmm. 16 to 20 hours total instruction time. Well, I'm giving them 6 hours of instruction, so it's 10, 12 hours less maybe than a traditional class. How much more can they actually teach in those additional 10 to 12 hours? Not a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Okay, not a whole lot more. So I think people learn more by doing, and if they have the license, they can learn by doing more so than sitting in a class.
Yeah.
Listen to some guy drone on about SWR or something. What
kind of results do you have with your 1-day class?
I would say about 85%. I used to say 90%, but I don't think I can claim quite 90%. And it kind of aggravates me a little bit, because what I tell people is they really have to read the study guide a little bit before they come to class. Mm-hmm. And the ones that fail are almost inevitably the ones that haven't even cracked the book open.
You can tell they haven't studied.
Yeah. In fact, they'll tell me that, oh yeah, I meant to get around to it, or whatever, and that's okay. I mean, they sometimes you can't get to it, but I just wish they would have done it a little bit, because it would have made my numbers look better. Although I must say that we had a class 2 weeks ago, and all 18 passed, so I did have 100% in my last one. So
fantastic. Hey,
yeah.
How have you? What's the best way to word the question? How have you observed the hobby? It appears to be growing at every level. As an instructor, as someone who produces materials, you've got a very active blog. Is that a correct assumption? Are we growing the hobby? Are we doing it right? Or could we do things better?
Oh, you always can do things better, right? But I think that in general, I mean, the numbers tell the story, right? There's more licensed radio amateurs now than ever before. And when I was a kid, the number passed around was about 250,000, right? So now we're over 700,000. Well, what does that tell you? That tells you there's a lot of people out there that are doing ham radio. I think what they're not doing maybe is more of the traditional stuff, like operating on the HF bands and making sideband contacts and stuff like that. But there's so many forms of amateur radio now that I don't think that the level of activity on 40 meter CW is a good indication of the health of the hobby.
I got you.
So, and I say that as a 40 meter CW operator.
Yeah, I was getting ready to go there. You are a self-professed CW geek, and you've actually written a book about it here recently, in addition to your study guides, and I've downloaded that as well. Tell us a little bit about that book. Tell us the title. We can find it on Amazon, I believe. And
Amazon and on my website.
All right, tell us about the book.
Okay, so now that the code is no longer a requirement, people get their license, but there's still a mystique about Morse code, or maybe there is a mystique now because it's not a requirement. So I've always had people ask me about learning Morse code and all that stuff, and not only learning Morse code, then what do they do after they've learned it? And there's some books out about it already, but again, just like my study guides are sort of stripped down, this book is sort of stripped down. In fact, I almost called it the No Nonsense Guide to CW, but because I just lay it out there. Some of these books, they'll tell you the history of Morse code and give you in the appendix there'll be appendices that list the Japanese Morse code characters and the Russian Morse. Well, I don't have any of that in this book. It's just, hey, here's some ways to learn it. Here's what you do when you get on the air. Here's some tips about choosing a paddle or choosing a key, whether it's a paddle or a straight key. And it's the No Nonsense Guide to CW. And if people like my study guides, I think that the approach I take in my study guides, they'll like the approach I take to CW in this book.
I've started reading it. It's hilarious because this kind of, listening to a podcast 6 months from now, this isn't going to make any sense. But just last week, I spent some time in the vehicle, in the truck.
Yeah.
And that's when I get to listen to my podcast when I'm by myself, either at the dishwasher, at the breakfast, preparing breakfast for the kids, or traversing from my country home, which is way down in the sticks, into the city, which is about a 30-minute ride. So I listened to your program as I was going to interview my 95-year-old Elmer, World War II veteran, CW guy. It's an awesome. I cannot wait to get the show aired. But
what's his call sign?
Whiskey 4, November Tango Oscar, W4NTO.
I probably have worked him.
If you've ever been close to 40 or 80, you've probably talked to him a few times. But Fritz is a great guy, and I was listening to your program as I was going up to his house, And you're the podcast, the QSO today. You're talking about CW and working CW, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just timing. So I sit down with Fritz, and what did we talk about the entire time? Working CW, and I came home, and then it was just a few days later. There's a new app released. How to study CW, and I purchased your book, and I'm reading about CW, and I thought to myself, how in the world do I have time? I'm trying to podcast, homeschool, run a house, run a couple of businesses. Now I'm going to learn CW and study for extra at the same time. But you're right. There is a mystique about it, and although it kept me from the hobby for so long, now I have a large, I enjoy digital modes, okay?
Yeah.
But the CW thing, it's like, wow. And I want to learn it with my children. I've talked to my oldest. I've got 3 boys, 2 that are really close in age. We've talked about learning it, and I kind of sold it to them as an idea of, this is a language that nobody else in the house will be able to speak. Mm-hmm. We'll be like spies. Now they're ready to learn. So the book so far, what I've had a chance to take in, I've really enjoyed it, and you guys should check it out. Again, it's Kilo Bravo 6 November Uniform. Is that right? Yep. And you can go to Dan's site there. Dan, let's take a break for just a second. We're going to hear from Main Trading Company and be right back here on the Other Ham Radio podcast, Photime.
Visit mtcradio.com today, a great one-stop mom-and-pop shop for everything ham radio. Radios, antennas, power supplies, wire and cable, books and training materials, microphones, headsets, and accessories. Find popular brands like MFJ, Heil Sound, Jetstream, LDG, Alinco, Comet, Texas Bugcatcher, Radio Waves, and more. mtcradio.com, an authorized Kenwood and ICOM dealer. mtcradio.com.
Before we get back to Dan, I want to give a shout out. I got a couple of shout outs. Donald Kilo Charlie 9 Zulu Mary Yankee. Thank you for hitting the PayPal button and helping Photime stay on the air. Also, some new Twitter followers: Kilo Delta 8 Sierra Romeo Foxtrot, November 5 Delta Golf Charlie, KP4 Radio from Puerto Rico, and Echo 7-3 Mary as well. Thank you all for following us along at Twitter. We're on Facebook, Google+, and all those things can be found on the website at itsphotime.com. Now, back to the call with Dan, Kilo Bravo 6 November Uniform. Well, we're back with Dan. And Dan, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. It sounds like romance, right?
Yeah.
Romantic?
No, just romantic.
Romantic.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in South Carolina, we butcher everything like that. Yeah. So I apologize.
What I tell people, close enough.
Close enough. Okay. Well,
and in ham radio, you got a call sign. You get my call sign right, don't even worry about my last name.
Exactly. And we know that. It's Kilo Bravo 6 November Uniform. And you can find Dan online at KB6NU.com. And it's one of the more popular, maybe the most popular, according to Google, ham radio blogs. And it's full of all kind of stuff that you need to be reading if you're coming into the hobby. If you've been here a while, you're looking to upgrade. Dan is the one who produces the no-nonsense guides to amateur radio, whether it's tech, general, or the extra upgrade as well. Dan's also a very avid CW. Do we call you a CW geek or?
You may.
Okay.
That's what I call myself.
So
that's my email address. CWgeek@KB6NU.com.
It is. So of all the modes, Dan, of everything that's available to us amateurs, whether we're techs, novice, whatever, CW is your thing.
Yeah, that's the mode I enjoy the most. Right?
Okay. Do you operate CW mobile?
No, and one of the reasons why is I really don't drive that much. I work. No, seriously, I work from home, and I put probably less than 5,000 miles on a car every year.
Wow, you live close in town, I guess.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and in fact, even then, Ann Arbor is a college town, very walkable, and lots of times I'll just walk places rather than drive.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. So, and to be honest, I don't even have like a 2-meter radio in my car because I'm not in the car enough.
He doesn't have a cell phone either, folks.
Yeah, right. That's another thing.
I found that out earlier today. I was like, just text me. And he said, I don't have a phone. Hey, man, hang on as long as you can, if it weren't for the phone, we couldn't have this conversation. Now, I'm in my shack, which is in my barn about 75, 100 yards from the house up on the hill. There's nothing up here. And we don't have any wired internet connection anywhere in this vicinity, so I'm actually using the data on the phone to get into Skype tonight. But that's neither here nor there. It works good for that. Yeah. And but I want to talk to you about, we talked for just a few minutes about your CW Geeks Guide to Having Fun with Morse Code. And you've also published another book that's available as well on the KB6NU ham blog and available on Amazon. And it's called 21 things to do after you get your amateur radio license.
Right.
What are some of the things that you touch on in your 21 things to do after you get your license?
Well, the first thing is get on the air. You'd be surprised how many guys they'll get a license and then just not even get on the air or wait 2 or 3 or 4 months. I mean, yeah, I know it's kind of beyond me, but that's the first thing. Then there's other things in there like go to a ham fest. See what's what people bring to ham fests. Join a club. You'll find people that have share your interests at clubs, and maybe you'll meet the next best friend of your life there. And certainly your Elmer. I don't know where you met your Elmer, but my first Elmer I met at the Hazel Park Amateur Radio Club.
Oh, yeah. If it weren't for the local club, I mean, I would be an internet-only kind of guy,
Yeah. Those are the kinds of things that are in the book.
Fantastic. We get a lot of questions here, Dan, and we've talked about it during this program and off the air about new folks coming into the hobby, listening to the podcast, and having a lot of these same questions. Not that we don't mind answering them, folks. We want to answer your questions and try to connect you where you need to go. But this book is, and I've read it. It's a great read, especially for somebody who really don't know what to do. But Dan, you're right. There's so many people who buy a Chinese walkie-talkie, they get licensed, and they sit there scared to death to key the microphone like it's going to bite them or something. And
right.
there's 100 old guys in your town just dying for somebody to call for a signal check for a new ham so they can talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're going to have clubs in some areas that aren't any fun to be participating with, but at the same time, there's a lot of folks out there who will welcome you with very open arms. And you just have to say hi. And it's really that simple.
And the other thing I sometimes tell people, I used to be the affiliated club coordinator for the state of Michigan. And, I used to get comments from hams all the time. Oh, there's a bunch of old farts in this club, or they didn't say boo to me when I went to one of their meetings. What I tell them is start your own club. Find some other guys, start your own club.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another thing that's not in my book, but I mean, that's something else they could do.
Exactly.
Don't wait for the approval of the old guys,
Yeah. Well, we just for instance, and I know some of the local guys listen here, and this is not good or bad. It's just what happened. There was some guys here locally who felt like they were being kind of shunned on the local 2-meter repeater, and the newer guys who really didn't have a lot of experience, maybe just technicians with some walkie-talkies, they could get in the repeater fine and talk, but they'd call and nobody would answer them. Or, after the first 5 or 6 times they talked to somebody and they got the new war off of them, they just were kind of left alone. And then 2 buddies came on and wanted to talk about Bojangles, and the conversation went between those guys for 30 minutes, and the new guy was just completely ignored. And I said, there's a 440 repeater here in town that's just marvelous. That's a graveyard. And I said, why don't you just come over to the 440 machine, and when you want to talk, throw your call out, and we'll just get some guys to come talk. And we've got some females that are new, and they're kind of afraid to talk to the the DX gods or something, So it may not even be that you need a new club. It could be that you can just find a space on a repeater or something that you and maybe a couple of like-minded friends could jump on and enjoy that particular space.
Right. Absolutely.
Tell us some things from your time in the hobby that we could do to improve ourselves as clubs and members of the different ham radio organizations.
Well, that's a good question. I think as far as clubs go, I mean, the whole trick is to be is try to be welcoming as possible to new people. You know, there's always going to be people that leave your club, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not bringing in new people, then you're going to that club's just going to go away. It's going to wither away and die. So that's one thing. Then when you get those new people in, see what they're interested in, and see if you can't get them to or share their interests somehow. Then the other thing is, as far as clubs go, make sure you have good programs. You know, I mean, if nobody's going to come to a club meeting if all the club does is sit around and, I don't know, talk about 80 meter nets or something. You know, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's like you got to keep an eye on what's happening in ham radio, and then schedule programs to do that. So, you know, all those things kind of considered. That's what I would do anyway.
Do you ever do any sort of any local with your folks who go through your classes? If they show any desire to learn CW, do you do CW nets locally or anything like that?
Well, you know, we do have one. We have one on Sunday night here in Ann Arbor, and we haven't had a lot of participation in that, unfortunately. But so I don't really know what to say about that. It's kind of hard. See, you know, CW is one of those things that there's a fairly steep learning curve,
yeah.
right? And you know, and that's the problem with it. You know, it's like so that's hard. And you know, I must say, and I'm not really bragging here, but CW's always been kind of easy for me. So, you know, like a lot of times somebody will say, well, you know, I'm just having a hard time doing this, and I wish I had better advice to give them. Because I don't really, because it's just always been kind of easy for me.
Well, reading was very easy for me.
Well, that's good.
And the reason I say that is I understand your comment there, because my oldest boys, reading is not very easy to them. And I'm like, gosh, guys, you know, I mean, wow, it just makes sense to me, but
yeah,
you know, some things are just harder for people to learn.
Right.
You know,
right.
But
I think so there's, everybody's different, right? Everybody learns differently, and I've met a few, but not that many that just cannot learn it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's some that, you know, it's a little bit harder for them. Well, you know, it's just one of those things. You've just got to keep at it, and I think one mistake people make is trying to do too much at once. So if you can break it down into like 15, 20-minute sessions with whatever program you've got or app you have, that's better than trying to do, you know, doing 15 minutes over four separate times over 4 separate days is better than trying to do 1 hour every 4 days.
I got you.
If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I often tell people.
So if you got a few minutes on your lunch break, take your phone out, plug your earpiece in, and go to work for a few minutes.
Exactly, and only do it for 10 or 15 minutes.
Right.
You know, but do it every single day for 4 days. You know?
Unless we're just a prodigy, we shouldn't expect to be able to learn. Well, let me rephrase that. What time frame should the average person think about regarding learning Morse code to where they can receive fairly competently?
You know, again, that it's hard to say, and everybody's different. But I think that in general, if you stuck with it, you know, it's a matter of a month or two.
Okay.
And the other thing I tell people is that once you know the letters and numbers, get on the air. Just honestly, get on the air. And what I say in the book, there's a certain protocol to a Morse code contact, and I explain how to do that, and it's in the ARRL operating manual. It's in a bunch of different places too, and so at least the basic contact is sort of prescribed, right? I mean, you say this and this and this. You give the first transmission, you give a signal report, you tell the other guy your name and tell him where you're located, and then he'll do the same for you. So you kind of know what you're listening for, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just a conversation where they're going to throw a bunch of stuff at you that you're not expecting. And so once you know the letters and numbers, get on the air. You know what the protocol is. You'll be able to make the contact, and you'll be surprised how much that getting on the air and talking to somebody focuses you on it. And I think it's that focus that helps people learn it and then get faster.
And I was reading your book. I was prepping breakfast and I was reading at the same time, and it says W1AW, they do CW all through the day, all the time. And I thought to myself, wow, that starts in 5 minutes. So I run in the bedroom and grab the shortwave, and I get it over there near the window and pull the mast up on the antenna. And sure enough, we're listening. My sons are like, wow, that's somebody talking? And I said, yeah. Yeah, it's
that's good.
It's intriguing, man. And I don't know why I've just got the bug for whatever reason. And this podcast has really kind of messed with me. And I don't know of a better term to use. But here recently we had on Rob Riggs from Mobile Linked, and Rob makes a Bluetooth TNC to use with a PRS, a walkie-talkie, and an Android smartphone or a tablet. Great little device. And I purchased one. I got it here. I got it all set up, got it working, and couldn't figure out why in the world I had nothing happening. Well, there's no one in my county that's even operating APRS. So I've got the bug in my pants, and I've got 4 or 5 guys I'm trying to, motivate to get going. And it looks like we're getting ready to put up some digipeters and iGates. And now, I start looking at our conversation was impending, and mentioning the talk with one of my Elmers, and man, it's just like, here's CW.
Well, see, that's the thing about ham radio, isn't it? There's so many interesting things going on. How can you even do a half of it?
You're exactly right. It's so much more than walkie-talkies talking to your buddies about where you're going to lunch. I mean, wow.
Absolutely. And I think podcasts like this and my blog, I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to say, hey, look, this is all out here, and think about that. Don't talk to the guys on the repeater. There's these little dongles that you can do software defined radio with. There's the latest thing we're going to try here, and this isn't cutting edge. This has been around a long time. We're going to try and set up a mesh network.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool thing. It's all kinds of cool things.
Well, especially where you're at, the mesh network would be awesome, because I'm assuming there's probably a pretty good population density there.
Yeah, we have a fair group of people that are close, and I think if we work at it, we could set up a mesh around the whole city.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it would be. I think so too.
There's some great things out there, and it's like we spoke about in email about what's happening tomorrow. What are we going to do tomorrow? The future of the hobby. Now, we can rest on our laurels with Packet, and we can rest on our laurels with CW. And while those are still fun and definitively useful, yeah. There's so many things out there, and they're changing daily. I mean, that's just going back real quick to the Bluetooth TNC. As a kid working at Radio Shack in 1989, I would have never imagined that I could take that cell phone that was mounted in my truck with a cord on it, and it being small enough now to slide in my back pocket and being the size of half the pack of a cigarettes, and taking something to connect to that and wirelessly communicating over the internet with it. It's just phenomenal. And there's so many things out there for us to touch on. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really is.
And people say, how do we bring the youth into the hobby? How do we introduce the hobby to the youth? Oh my God, give them about 5 minutes of this really cool stuff, and they'll be all over you.
Yeah. I think so too.
Yeah.
And don't I don't know what to say. Discourage them, or just let them do it.
Yeah, let them come and see what's out there, really. Because once they get an idea of what it is, oh my goodness, if you can get their faces out of their phones for just 20 minutes, you can show them some innovation that will be far greater than any video game that they could ever play with. And I believe that, because not everybody's going to embrace it, but there are people, Dan, just like you and I, who somewhere in the past were touched by the magic of radio. And there are kids out there now who are just anticipating being touched by the magic of radio. And once they do, it's over with.
Yeah.
Even in this society.
I don't know if I mentioned this to you before either in the email, but another one of the things I do is I'm the station manager for WA2HOM, which is the amateur radio station at the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum.
Ah.
And so A2 stands for Ann Arbor, HOM for Hands-On Museum. And, it's not for, like you say, it's not for everybody. A lot of kids, look at it and then wander away. But every once in a while you get a kid you can talk to about it. He understands it and gets excited about it. Eventually some of those kids get in my classes and, they turn into ham radio operators. And
you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
And they're our future.
Yep.
They're everyone's future. Dan makes a great study guide series for the technician general and extra license classes through the ARRL. His books can be found at Kilo Bravo 6 NovemberUniform.com. And Dan, we appreciate you coming on and sharing with us about all things. We've kind of been around the block 3 or 4 times, and I think it's been quite interesting. I'd like to have you back on maybe, and maybe do a show possibly a little more focused on the code itself. And some tips and tricks on how to learn it and how to listen to it, and well, you're the pro. You could share all of that with us.
I'm just an amateur,
professional amateur, right? All right, so we can find you at Kilo Bravo 6 NovemberUniform.com. Right. You've got a blog. Before I go, I gotta back up just a minute. Didn't you just release some of your technician study guide as audio?
Well, so that's sort of a little experiment I'm trying. I recorded some of the sections, and I put them on my blog. I'm maybe, I don't know, a tenth of the way through the study guide, and then I kind of got sidetracked into updating the general class study guide because I have to do that by the time the new question pool goes into effect. Mm-hmm. So I'm working on it, but it's not going as fast as maybe I wanted. And what I'm doing with that is I'm not just reading the study guide. Okay, so what I'm doing is more talking about the topics as I would in the one-day tech class.
Okay.
So I do explain the material even a little bit more than in the study guide. So I think that's working out, and I would invite anybody to go to my blog and listen to the sections I have recorded, and I'd love to get feedback on that. So
well, I haven't had time, but I just remembered that I had shared that link a few days. Well, I guess it's been maybe a week or two ago, and I got some pretty good feedback. Wow, so glad he's doing this, and I know it's a lot of work to produce anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And, because you want to read it like you've got it written, but at the same time you don't want to sound too dry, so you need to, but right. That's awesome, man. That's a chore.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. That's true. One of the guys that was in one of my classes is now trying to push me to do YouTube videos. Ah. And it's like, oh man, that's where am I going to find the time to do that?
Yeah.
But what he's saying I should do is like review products, and it's a good idea. It really is, but I just don't know if I'm going to ever have time to do all this stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, I got to give props, speaking of YouTube, to my buddy Jeremy, KF7IJZ. He's got a great YouTube channel. Jeremy's really into solar and battery power. Mm-hmm. And Jeremy is the one who initially heard you on the QSO Today podcast, again, which we'll have linked to our show in our show notes. And he said, "You've got to see if you can't connect with Dan, man. He's got a great story." And I didn't want to go too far back in your story because you've covered that recently in the podcast there on the QSO Today. But really appreciate you sharing with us what you're doing now in regards to the study guides, your work, your books, your classes. And most importantly, like everyone else, your opinion.
Well, I got plenty of those.
Yeah, don't we all?
We haven't. You probably don't want to do this, but we haven't even touched on my opinions about the ARRL. But we'll leave that for another time.
Yeah. Well, I heard that in the other show, and it was quite intriguing. And I did try to pull that out of you a few minutes ago, but no. Going back for just a minute. If you're looking for study guides, if you're looking to either become an amateur radio operator or upgrade your license, I can tell you that I've been using the extra class study guide, and I like it. And I want to encourage you guys to give it a peek over at Kilo Bravo 6 November uniform. It's Dan. Dan, thank you again for being on the show, and hopefully we can have you back in soon.
My pleasure. My pleasure, really.
All right, so did you learn anything? And the question, I guess, now to ask is, are you ready to learn more? You can find all the links to everything Dan and I discussed during the program on the amateurradio15.com website. Too much to type? Try this one. It's photime.com, okay? Anyway, we've got the links to his study guides, his CW Geek book, also the 21 Things to Do Now That You Have Your Ham Radio License. That's a great read, guys. You will answer for yourself by reading that book all the questions that you want to ask me or your Elmer or one of your online buddies. The answers are in that book, and it's well worth the money you pay for it. You can buy it straight from Dan from his website, which is kilobravo6novemberuniform.com. We also have them in the Photime store, the Amazon affiliate store, listed there in the books and study guide section, so you can check that out. Don't forget Main Trading Company, mtcradio.com. They can help you with your gear needs. And again, thank you, Dan. It was a very informative call. Can't wait to have you back on so we can learn more about CW. Speaking of, I bought an electronic gear this weekend and a tower and a beam, but we'll talk about all that later. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for our Twitter followers, the Facebook guys. Hey, most especially those latest reviews on iTunes. They look really sweet. Hope to get them mentioned next time on the podcast. Until next time, though, I got to run 73, y'all. We'll catch you later. This is Kilo 4 Charlie, Delta November Clear.
Thanks for downloading, listening, and subscribing to AmateurRadio15.com presents Photime, the other ham radio podcast. You can find our past episodes, web links, and more at AmateurRadio15.com. That's AmateurRadio15.com. Follow us on Twitter at Photime Podcast. And remember to visit our show sponsor, Main Trading Company, at mtcradio.com. Till next time, 73s.